What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I have joining with me Mike Crossett from out of the DC area. He's been in the personal training world for a while, but really in training out of the place he's at now for about, a year and a half?
Yep, year and a half.
Very cool. And that's the Body Mass Gym, is that right?
Yep, called Body Mass Gym. They've got a location in Arlington, Virginia, and then one is in DC, kind of by Howard University.
Cool. Well, Mike, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a fun chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike, just for the sake of those listening, talk a bit to me about kind of how you got to where you're at in the fitness world right now, where you started, and what that journey's been like for you a little bit.
Absolutely. I have an interesting kind of backstory when it comes to like how I made it into the fitness field in the first place. I've been an athlete my whole life. Was a big soccer player my whole life. I know you played soccer too. I saw on your Instagram. So like that had always a little bit of an influence on me getting into fitness in the long run. But I started as a music major in college, and then I decided I didn't really like that because it was too structured, and the creativity aspect of music that I really liked and enjoyed was kind of squashed down by all the structure of learning it and trying to be a music major. So my natural switch was going into exercise science. So that was the next on the list. And then that one was something that even more structure actually made me like even more. So that's kind of how I ended up in learning about this stuff. And I did my undergraduate in exercise science, and I did a master's degree in applied nutrition, and then naturally went to get a CSCS because I just thought that was like the most, cool certification that also applies to personal training and outside of personal training if you're more specialized. So I started with the military after I got my master's degree, and basically was a contract employee for the Army. And I worked out of a place called Army Wellness Center. I think it's now been out of there for a little while now. I think it's been changed to now Armed Forces Wellness Center, if I'm not mistaken. There was one up at Fort Meade that I worked at for most of my time, but I know there's another one in the Fort Belvoir area. And so I started as a promotion technician, which was kind of more the promoting our services and kind of doing educational like talks and seminars for soldiers, their families, and military members, and DoD civilians. And then I became the next step up, which was like a health educator, where I did more of the hands-on in-person services, where you would do health coaching and health education. You do composition testing with the bod pod, VO2 testing for athletic performance, metabolic rate testing for people that needed help with nutrition. And then we also did a variety of other like programs that helped with sleep and stress. So from there, that's when I decided I want to get more hands-on and really kind of do more of the first-hand impactful thing of like working with people one-on-one. So that's now why I'm here at a Body Mass Gym and working with people one-on-one.
Cool. I love it.
Classes.
Yeah. So, just backing up just a step, you mentioned doing a lot of work with like sleep and stress with the, armed forces members that you were seeing pretty regularly. What does that look like when you're working with somebody who obviously has to manage a lot of stress, in a situation where they may or may not be getting sleep?
Yeah. So yeah, probably one step up for military members, especially because they have such a unique circumstance compared to some of the rest of us. But they obviously have a lot higher stressors and potentially more on their plate than some people. Again, you don't want to generalize there, but they tend to have to really focus and plan more than maybe your average person if they're going to get things in line again. Not to say that everyone is perfect at that, but like that's something I noticed with a lot of the higher up level people in the military, the ones that got further along and promoted and higher ranked, is they're the ones that tended to have their exercise under control. They had their sleep and stress under control, and without that, like it makes just harder for the normal daily life to happen. And be
Yeah.
successful. So that's one of the big things I noticed, at least.
Yeah. So a, intentionality behind planning, the process for getting quality sleep, managing stress, like
Mhm.
those things, you can see kind of the chicken or the egg in terms of, hey, when people manage those things well, they tend to progress, they tend to stay longer, they tend to see more success,
Right,
versus those who just get it when they can,
right.
not as much.
Yeah,
So
there definitely was a correspondence there. Again, it's not, you can't generalize 100%, but
absolutely,
I
there's
definitely
outliers.
noticed a trend there. And
Yeah.
the people that were doing better with that stuff tended to work their way up the ranks and be even more successful. So
Yeah.
probably a good parallel there with some of the people we work with, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you talk about, you can't generalize, for the most part. My recommendation, a lot of times what I'll have is people come to me and they're like, "Hey, I'm having a really hard time being consistent with my workouts." And one of my, go-to answers is, "Hey, the earlier in the day that you get something done, the less likely it is for the world and emergencies and whatever it is for life to happen, and get in the way. And whether that's just fatigue towards the end of the day or what. Um, but there are exceptions, right?
Right.
And so I've got a client who he'll log his exercise sessions at 11:30 at night, sometimes 1 in the morning, and he's probably one of my most consistent people. But you can tell it's from a commitment to, hey, this is a non-negotiable for me. I'm getting this done no matter what.
Mhm.
Whereas not everybody has the ability to do that, um, either mentally or even, from a life situation standpoint. Right? If you've got kids, that makes that even harder.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so he's not quite in that stage of life yet.
Right.
And so definitely he's able to work around that for now. But cool.
It might change later though, right?
Exact
Adaptability is key.
exactly. Yes. And that's one of the things I was just chatting with um Daniel Yorez not long ago, and we were talking about flexibility and understanding that not every single person is going to get to where they want to go the same way,
Right.
because what works for one person is not going to work for another, not necessarily going to work for another. Everybody's a little bit different, everybody's life is a little bit different, so understanding that, hey, this method may work for you, but I can't just do a full 2-hour workout in the middle of the day.
Right.
I got to break that thing up, or, spread it out over 5 days instead of doing, a 3-day a week intense workout, whatever it looks like for that person.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've noticed that. I did a little challenge um, for myself. It was like a walking or running challenge for this month, and
Yeah.
obviously, again, I noticed the same thing you just referenced of like the days. I obviously wasn't going for 100% perfect. I was going for like I was shooting for around 90. I'm a little bit under that, probably
Yeah.
more like 85%.
Yeah.
But I noticed, yeah, exactly what you said, where the days where I'm like, I'll just do it like after I eat dinner. Those are the days
Yeah.
it didn't happen, right?
Right. Exactly.
So I think that's a really valid point you made there.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is good to understand is, in relation to not only how you get things done, but also, what you're using. So, um, you know, whereas I really enjoy working with dumbbells, really enjoy barbell work, especially kind of, just free range barbell work. So doing a lot of like stuff without a rack. Um, but one of the things you just recently we were talking about before we got on was a kettlebell certification, working through like how to utilize kettlebells better. So, talk me through just what that process was like for you, and kind of getting a little bit more well-rounded understanding of how to use the kettlebell properly, and you know how you personally go about choosing an implement for somebody or for a purpose.
Mhm. Yeah, so the kettlebell thing was cool. I was very unconditioned with kettlebells before I did this, so I kind of hopped into this class last second, and without a whole lot of knowledge other than maybe I was
Yeah.
okay at maybe doing like a kettlebell swing.
Right.
So this was a pretty intensive course, and it went through pretty much every and anything you can think of, and even more outside of the box stuff. So like getting anything from your kettlebell swing to then going to a lateral swing, going from a kettlebell swing to a clean, which is like where you kind of bring it up towards the shoulder, and then the kettlebell snatch, so going from a swing to a clean to a snatch, which is when you get the kettlebell up overhead and are basically holding it over your head. And then obviously the more unorthodox stuff was like they were a little kind of more in the weeds of like there's obviously some ways you should and shouldn't move with a kettlebell, but like think of it more in the motion of the way you move your body. Again, like yeah, there's some ways that are more efficient and less, but like there's plenty of ways that you can go outside of the standard, right? So
Yeah.
it was really cool because by the end he was having us do some like flows where it'd be like, all right, the only like rule is like you got to swing in between. So try to do a swing in between any motion
Hmm.
you go.
Nice.
And so then by the time we got to the end of the course, it was 2 really intensive days for like 8 hours straight, which was exhausting. But we were trying to get more into a flow where it was just like trying to just go with what your body wanted to do, which is obviously if you've never done it before, like I'm more like an athlete where it's like, all right, we're doing this thing, then this thing, then this thing.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was kind of cool because it was creative in a sense, where it's like, oh, you kind of got to think like, what's happening next? What's happening next? What's happening next? But I thought it was cool from the athleticism standpoint because it's like, yeah, obviously in athleticism or being athletic, it's erratic, it's unpredictable, right? So that's where I thought it was really neat, and that's a really good tool to use for more athleticism. Um, Compared to maybe just doing like bodyweight stuff like plyometrics or like hops and jumps and skips. There's lots of good ways where you can be more athletic and use like power training or like being explosive with kettlebells. But I had no idea. Like I learned so many things throughout that course, and ultimately, yeah, I think it's a really big takeaway for me. It was like, yeah, there's so many ways you can use every different tool, whether it be
Yeah.
a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a barbell, have unlimited options there, and it's just a matter of the way you use it, I suppose.
Yeah. 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 I think that's really good because I think a lot of people will, they see a barbell and they're like, oh, that's for strength work.
Mm-hmm.
Or they see a dumbbell and like, oh, that's definitely aesthetics. Like, or cable machines often used for aesthetics. But I think you're absolutely right. It's how you use a piece of equipment that matters quite a lot. And oftentimes I find myself trying to help educate my clients on like, hey, if we really slow things down, now we're gonna be working on a lot of like that eccentric work, building joint stability,
Mm-hmm.
control, all these different things that are really helpful to in terms of like reducing your risk of injury. I don't like the term injury prevention. I kind of err on the side
Right.
of like reducing your risk,
Right. It's very
especially
subjective, right?
yeah, yeah, because I can reduce my risk of injury by simply not playing football,
Exactly.
uh, but I can't completely prevent it.
Right.
By I hear the term bulletproofing thrown around a lot, and that's not even remotely accurate.
Right. Right.
um, but yeah, so utilizing this newfound understanding of like, hey, these are the different ways you can use a kettlebell creatively. How are you implementing that into your current training right now?
So I'm lucky. I have in the Arlington location there is also a physical therapy practice that works out of part of that gym
Nice.
location. So like one of the physical therapists, his name is Sam Hodis. So shout out to Sam.
Yeah.
Um, Great physical therapist. If you ever need any physical therapy services outside of your primary care place, because again, he's real big on kettlebells. So I've been practicing with him a lot, and we've been doing a variety of things. Um, and even outside of what I already mentioned, like obviously, again, you can even do like kettlebell conditioning. So like
Yeah.
if you keep that heart rate up and you're doing continuous like swings or continuous complexes where you're going through swings into then cleans and snatches there. Um, which again, clean being when you get up to the shoulder with that kettlebell on the outside of the wrist, snatch when you're kind of swing up and catching that kettlebell overhead.
Yeah.
Um, it really gets your heart rate up. So like that's another thing that we've done, but primarily it's just again more in line with like what a lot of people do with their strength, which is like you got to practice it. You got to keep doing these motions over and over and over again. And you'll
Yeah.
notice little things that get better and you'll get more confident in those motions and movements. And uh, eventually, yeah, again, you can build upon that and get stronger and stronger. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the way I've been using it. And again, I'm still very, uh, very like new to the kettlebell thing. So like for me, I almost feel like I'm still at square one where it's like I'm
Yeah.
just learning still. I'm just learning how to make the kettlebell do what I'm trying to make it do and trying to build my skills there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that it's more of a personal preference than anything. And maybe it's a result of past experience with it. But in terms of, kettlebells, one of the things I'll use those for primarily is actually different carry variations.
Mm,
So I like the handles on them. They're easy to do like farmers carries with, but suitcase carries and then overhead carries. And the nice thing about a kettlebell is you can change it to the point where instead of doing just purely the carry and the strength work with it, which can be a really good core stabilizing strength exercise. One of the things that I'll do with it is take it a step further and go bottoms up kettlebell
absolutely.
on the different carry variations, especially overhead.
Right.
So
Lots
that
of coordination.
yeah, requires a lot of coordination. Definitely like a shaky exercise the first time you do it, pretty much no matter who you are. I've only seen one person ever master it right away, and he ended up as a professional athlete. So, uh, there's certain innate things that they're good at, and coordination is definitely one of them.
Yeah,
But
definitely a different idea and skill when it comes to like not only just making your muscle exert force, but making all the muscles in a specific area like your shoulder and the bottoms up
yeah,
hips coordinate that strength
right.
together and keep it where you want it to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, one of the things I think we kind of started to touch on it there a little bit was building skill and building strength through those movements.
Mhm.
I think there's a little bit of a misconception that, oh, I'm going to do this same exercise over and over and over again, and that's going to get me ripped.
Mhm.
What I think I oftentimes I'm telling people is like, or that's going to get me in much better shape. What I'm oftentimes telling people is like, we need to remember the concept of progressive overload, because there's also adaptation that takes place. Is right. We talk about our body becoming more skillful and more efficient at doing the things that we're practicing with regularity.
Yeah.
But what happens oftentimes is our body actually ends up exerting less energy, you know, using fewer calories to do the things that we're asking it to do, because now I'm way more efficient at doing that. I'm not fumbling around like I was at the very beginning.
Right.
And so there's kind of this mindset shift that you have to actually, progress it, make it harder. If you're doing something for months on end, which, there's some positives to that, is you can really build a nice base over a good period of time, as long as there's balance within your program.
Mhm.
But if you're doing something for a long time, you're going to get really efficient at it. And so there's definitely utility in changing things up, and also making sure that you are progressing upward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I feel like I see that even more in like cardio training for people than
Yeah.
strength. Because like
Yeah.
strength, it's almost unanimous, or it should
Right.
be unanimous with people. It's like, oh yeah, if you want to get stronger, you got to lift more weight, right?
Right.
Versus
Yeah.
cardio, people will be like, all right, I'm just gonna go run for 30 minutes, and then that
Yeah.
becomes the norm where it's like, all right, where are you progressing there? Like,
Right.
are you running a little bit
You're
longer than
not
30
going
minutes?
faster. You're not going longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're on a treadmill, are you bumping that speed up a little bit? Are
Right.
you increasing the incline every once in a while?
Yeah.
Obviously, at some point, it's going to be a diminishing return there of like, yeah, obviously, you don't want to keep just adding minutes
Yeah.
because then it becomes like hours of your day, unless you're training for a marathon or something.
Right.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
applicable, but you got to know your task at hand, right?
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
the the strength idea there for sure is like definitely, I think, one that lines up with the idea of like obviously you can train for those different categories, right? So obviously we already touched on power,
Yeah.
but there's kind of like power and strength are adjacent there, with your power being a little less weight with probably moving faster and moving the weight faster. Strength
Yeah.
being more like lifting the heaviest you possibly can for the highest weight and probably lower reps. And
Yeah.
then you're kind of middle of the road ones where it's more muscle building with moderate weight and moderate rep ranges. And then if you're really trying to build endurance there, maybe even a little bit lower with your muscular endurance when it's even higher rep ranges and a little bit less weight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Having all of those is valuable.
Right.
In
Yeah. And
different forms.
I think that's something, a lot of people, there is a little bit of a general misunderstanding of, there's strength work or there's weightlifting or exercise, and then there's, cardio. And a lot of people just bulk things into those two
Right.
categories. And I think you broke it down beautifully of like, no, even within, your weightlifting, there's ways to train, 3 or 4 even different variables within that. And one of the things that I really, most of my clients are 55 plus in terms of their age. And so one of the things that I find is really valuable is training for power at that age,
Yeah.
primarily because of fall risk.
Yeah.
Most people don't actually have the ability to produce force very quickly, especially in the upper body, which a lot of times is what people need to catch themselves, in the middle of a fall.
Hmm.
And so as I'm explaining this to clients, they're going, oh, like I always thought, hey, it would be my legs that would save me, which obviously you want to build strong legs to reduce that risk anyways.
Hmm.
But as you're able to build both an upper body and a lower body that can respond very quickly to changes in your equilibrium, like training for power becomes a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is that's something that I'm going to be doing in one of the little like workshops, or hopefully it might become a normal regular scene class in our class schedule. But that's
Nice.
going to be the focus, is like kind of more power based training. And again, obviously it's limited in when you're focused on a strength training class that only has 60 minutes, that uh, there's only usually a few things you can maybe throw into that if you're trying to get a full complete program. So we kind of skimp a little bit on the power training right now. So that's why I'm trying to coordinate with the owners to create a new
Yeah.
kind of idea there that has a little more focus on power, and it might be like a full training session on mostly power stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. One of the things that, a little over a year ago when I was training at a facility, at like a private facility,
hmm
and doing less of the online stuff, I did a class that was purely medicine balls,
hmm
and that was mostly for people who were, a little overweight, and most of them were into their late 40s or 50s and beyond.
hmm
And it was basically a little bit of control and power, and that's what we worked on. And it was probably one of the most popular classes there.
Oh yeah.
People were asking for it when I wouldn't be there, and
Mm-hmm.
so people, it's a fun way to train. And I think also, and this is a personal preference, as somebody who really enjoys using medicine balls in their work. Yeah, it can be a really good way to relieve some stress, just throwing some balls around.
Yeah, for sure.
Kids have it right. Just go play, kick some balls around, throw some around, and it's a great stress relief
Yeah.
activity. Keeps things light.
I always thought it might be a fun. I would have to like figure out how to make it work, but like medicine ball, bocce ball, or something like that.
Nice. So I've seen, and this is typically not done for people over, outside of their 30s. But I've seen medicine ball volleyball.
I've seen that too on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's usually like
And
bigger bodybuilders doing it or
right,
something. Or
people who
power.
have, yeah, people who already have that power and a lot of strength to do it, because for the average person, it's probably not a good idea if they don't want to get hurt.
Right.
But I've seen stuff like that. Bocce ball would be a good one,
Yeah.
where it's a little less power intensive and just more going for accuracy. That would be interesting. I like
Yeah. I'll let you know if I figure out a way to do it.
that.
Maybe that'll be like the last 10 minutes of class if this becomes like
Yeah,
a regular offering in our class.
there you go.
Get the little play at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, Mike, is there anything else, we've talked about a good bit, especially around equipment. Is there anything else that you think would be valuable for people to hear? You feel like we covered a good amount there.
Since we've talked a fair bit about power,
Yeah.
let's maybe like end with what are your top go-to most applicable power exercises for people that work for the majority? So like obviously
Mm.
there's exceptions to the rule always, but what are
Yeah,
your
yeah,
go-tos? And then I'll go with what are my go-tos?
yeah. I mean, I pretty much, I have one major go-to, and that's just a straight up stand up medicine ball slam, and then you can throw variations on that. But I have people who have severe scoliosis,
Hmm.
that it's hard for them to, they can't do a whole lot of twisting without pain. But they're able to use their upper body, use their core, get their back involved a little bit in their hips, and do a medicine ball slam with power. And so we can use that a couple of different ways, as we can do repeatable power, where I say, hey, get 5 as hard as you can, as quickly as you can, or whatever number you want to go with. Or you can do it nice and slow, concentrate on the power of 1 at a time, and really work it that way. And I think even just mixing up with that is a really fun way for people to do that, and they're just slamming it on the ground.
Yeah.
So, what about
Cool.
yourself?
I'm gonna throw, I guess, 3 out there. So let's
Perfect.
do obviously kettlebell swings, I think a really powerful one. And obviously there's a thousand ways you can do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of credence to getting good at a kettlebell swing for many different reasons. But obviously, again, the lower body power, the coordination, and obviously you can feel even like a little bit of a stretch effect from that. At least I've felt it myself. If you have really tight hips and low back like I do.
Yeah.
I was gonna say a medicine ball slam and variations as well.
Yeah.
But let's trade that out for maybe like I'll go 2 bodyweight ones. So obviously broad jumps I think are great,
Yeah.
especially
Absolutely.
if you're just going for like practicing landing or absorbing force. Obviously you could turn that into a box jump. And obviously again, for some people you might need to do more of a step down version, right? So
Yeah.
jump out of the
For sure.
box, land, and then maybe step down rather than jumping back down, because
Right.
backwards jumping is a lot harder than forward jumping,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And then jump squats, I think, or even like a a jump squat catch rather than
Yeah.
doing the explosive upward portion. I like having people do just the force absorption on the way
Yeah.
down. So kind of like arms
Snap
coming
downs,
back and down.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. Snap down.
Yeah.
Because some people that have like really iffy knees and whatnot can't do the full like explosive jump squat or box jump.
Right.
And it's kind of like a bridge into it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I
Those
love
are
it.
some of the top ones I use, at least with my
Yeah.
one-on-one clients, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I appreciate you bringing that up. That was a good idea. All right. Well, we are just about at time.
Okay.
Mike, thank you so much for hopping on. I appreciate you, man. And where can people find you if they're looking for more information from you?
So primarily, I don't do a whole lot of posting of my own content right now, but I really do
Yeah.
enjoy posting other people and filtering good information to people through my Instagram account. Eventually, I'll put my own stuff out there, but I'm just not at
Yeah.
that place yet where I want to dedicate that time.
Sure.
So I repost other good coaches right now. But you can find me on Instagram at coach_Crossett, and that's CROSS as in Sierra, ETT as in Tango. You can hear my past
Yeah.
military phonetics there.
There you go.
And
All right.
then bodymassgym.com. So obviously, if you're interested in checking out our classes or training with me, the easiest way to do it is just go right through our gym website, and you can check out more about us there. So bodymassgym.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. And to everybody else, we will see you next time.
All right. Thanks again. Great talking to you, Jackson.